When we work with front-end technologies, state management have very crucial part there. So let's talk about state first. So we will see what is state. Every Angular component have their own state. So let's suppose we have a member num equals to 0, then it means this num is stored in a state. It means now your application remember the value of num, but only in this component level. Outside this component, your Angular application does not know about this num. So it is called a local state. So if we increase the value of num or decrease the value of num or do any kind of operation like multiplication or anything, then our component is going to react on those changes, and those changes are going to be reflected on your application. Suppose you have added 1 on this num, then your num will become 1. So your application gonna keep remember the value of num until you visit on the next component and come back to this component. So if you visit to another component and come back to this component, then this value is going to be lost because this state is managed locally on the component level. So I hope you have good idea about the state and why do we need state management. So why do we need state management is because managing complex state is not an easy task. So if we have some complex state, it means we have an array and we have some other states like loading and error management, and we have bunch of states to manage in this component. Then it is not easy to manage with our existing state management options. One solution is we can use a traditional approach, service with subject. There you can use behavior subject, and that state can be shared across multiple components also. So it is one approach, and another approach is we can use some state management library like Ngrx, but Ngrx is much more complex than Ngrx component store. They are two different things. So Ngrx component store is useful when you have local state to manage. It means you want to manage states component level only. But if you have a very complex application and you want to store that state in a single place, and that state is going to be shared across your application, it means you want global state management, then you must use Ngrx store. So I'm not going to talk about the differences between them. You can go here and you can just check out this documentation. Here you can find all the difference between both of things. So let me walk you through there. So this is Ngrx store and this one is Ngrx component store. Ngrx store is a centralized store. Here you have a single state, then that single state is going to be shared across all the components. But component store is divided between multiple components. It means one component have its own component store, then it means you have to define that state management in every component if you want to use there. So with component store we have multiple independent states, while in the Ngrx store we have single state, and there is a lot of difference between them. You won't know until you have used it. It is just going to be theoretical and it is not going to make that much sense when you see things only on the theoretical base. But anyway, I'm just going to explain you. So Ngrx store have 3 separate files. One is selector, one is reducer, and one is effect. But component store is about only one file. So inside a single file we have our selector, we have updater, we have effect. So Let's talk about selector first. What is selector? We need a selector for selecting the state. Then we have this updater. Updater means you want to update the state, and effect, it means you want some side effects. So what is side effect? Suppose you want to add some data, that data is going to be stored in a component store, and that data is also going to be stored in a HTTP service. So along with state management, you want to fire some HTTP service also. Then that additional HTTP request is called a side effect. So you need side effects for that thing. Okay, so I know it is not going to make that much sense right now, but you will understand it much better when we do things more practically. So right now let's open this application and let me walk you through this application. I have already created this application. I have written a lot of boilerplate by myself. You have to do one thing here. Go to my repository, and of course I'm going to post this link in the description, so you can check out this link from the description also. So here we have this repositories. So I have this repository component store demo, and I have these branches here. So you need to clone this init branch. Here you can find all the code for the initial application. So here copy just this thing and clone this repository. Once you have cloned this repository, just let me show you what you have to do. You have to clone this repository, then just open the terminal, and after that just type here git clone and name of repository. Okay, then you have to check out to this branch when you have installed all the libraries. Okay, so here we have several branches, so you have to go to this branch init, and in the init branch you will find all the boilerplate code. So I'm going to back to the master branch, but in the init branch you will find all the boilerplate code. So let me walk you through what is going on here. So first of all, I have this db.json file, and here I have some JSON data because I am using a JSON server. So you need to install this package also, this package JSON server. Okay, so if you are using this library, this branch in it, then it is going to be automatically installed when you type npm I. Then it will install all the necessary packages for you. Okay, so here we have our package.json file. It means so here we have db.json file. For that we have installed this JSON server, and I have also written a script here, this. So here we have this command JSON server was db.json file. Okay, so to run this server you have to write npm run server, and our server will be started soon. Okay, so let me wait. Okay, so our server is listening on this 3000 port, and here we have this resource called movies. Okay, after that let's just run this application ngserve open, and it is going to be opened soon. So it is our basic application where I have configured routes. So we have this home route, then counter, then person, then movies, and it is just HTML and CSS. There is not any data, so this is just a dummy data I have displayed here, and it is also is just HTML and CSS, nothing else. So I already have added some HTML and CSS so that we can save some time. Okay, so let's go here, and inside this src folder, inside the app, you will see here we have this environment file. So in this environment file, I have stored our URL of the base APIs, sorry, base URL for our APIs. So it is our API URL, and here we have this counter component. It is just a blank component, nothing else here. And also we have our home component. It is also a blank component, and here we have this person component, and here I have defined some HTML and CSS only. So we don't have any coding stuff right now. We have this interface for person, ID, name, and email. Okay, here we have our movie component, and here I also have defined some CSS and HTML stuff, and we don't have any coding part right now. So we have this movie model and movie service. Here I have defined this service. So we are not going to use this service right now, so I'm going to comment it, otherwise it is going to create any error. We have this movie model. Now we have this utils.ts file, and here I have created a function which will return us a globally unique ID, GUID or UUID, whatever you call it. So that's our basic application. So let's see how we can use component store. So first of all, we need to install that package. So here let's go to the installation page, and here we can find this schematics for Angular, ngadd, and this schematics for npm. We can use either this or this one. So let's copy this guy and paste it here. So press enter. So it is successfully installed. That's it. So we have successfully installed a component store, and you do not need any configuration for it now. That's it. That's the only configuration we need. We just have to install this package from the npm. So now let's go with a basic example, and let's go with a famous counter application. So here we have our counter component. Let's make a new file here. Let's name it counter store.ts. That's it. And here we need an interface which is counter state. Okay, and here we need count number. So that is going to be our state. Right now we need few more things, like we need a class. So just type here export class name counter state. Since it is a service, so we have to write here injectable. Okay, so you have to notice one thing. You have probably seen that we have this thing called provided in root. So what does it mean? It means this service is going to be available for the whole application, and it will instantiate only once, and that scope will be present for every component. so we do not need that. So I'm going to remove it, and we will manually inject this service to a component with the help of provider. So we are gonna inject this service at the component level only. So our counter component will strongly depend on this counter service, and any other component cannot use this service directly. Okay, so here it should not be counter state, it should be counter store. Now we are fine. Now we have to inherit a component store, and here its type will be counter state, and we are going to use this constructor here, and inside this we will use this super keyword. It means we are calling the constructor of the base class, so it will need an instance of this counter state. So here we will pass an object of type counter state. So here count equals to 0. So initially we have set count to 0. Now we have a state where count is 0. So how we can select this state? We can select it just like count. We'll create an observable here, count, and this count will come from this dot state dot select, sorry, this dot state, not, it should be this dot select ss dot count. So in this way we can select our count state. It should be read only. Now we are good. Okay, now let's inject this counter store here. So we're going to use a functional router. So it should be store equals to inject counter store. That's it. And count equals to this dot count. Oops, I have done a mistake. This dot store dot count. Now we have selected this state from our component store. Let's see how we can define this state. So here just type span, and let's define here ng container. Here we will use async pipe count async as count. Okay, now let's move it here. That's fine. And here we can use count. So let's define some styles here. Font size, let's define it to 20 px. That's it. We'll define two buttons also, button, and it will be increment, and another one will be decrement. It should be async. That's it. Let's see how it is going. So let's go here, and we are not seeing anything. We may be facing some error right now. So here we have some error because our service is not defined in the root label. So we have to inject it with providers, and here we will define counter store. I hope we won't face any problem now. Right now we are not facing any errors, but we are also not displaying any data. So I think it is seeing 0 as null. So let's delete this guy and this guy. Just simply we can write here async, and I guess we should be fine now. Okay, so now it should be decrement. So let's define our increment and decrement function. So it's gonna write here increment, and below here we are going to write decrement, should be small d. So now let's define these functions here, increment and decrement. That's it. So let's see how we can increase and decrease the value of count here. For that, let's define a method read only, and read only increment equals to this dot updater. Inside the updater we have this state, and inside this state we can just write we can just write state dot count plus 1. State should be like this, I guess. So where can be the error? Yeah, it should be count, not state. So here we are just increasing the value of count. So our state is count here, and count have the value state dot count plus 1. So we are just increasing the value of count, and we are passing this value again to our state. So now we have increased the value of our count, so we can do the same with decrement function. So just write here decrement and state dot count minus 1. Minus 1. That's it. And here we can call these functions. So this dot store dot increment, and this dot just increment, and here we will just pass decrement. That's it. Let's go here and let's try to increase these values. Here you can see we have implemented basic functionality for our component store. Now let's move to little bit complex state. So here we are going to work on this person component. So now let's go here in the person section and let's do the same thing. We are going to create a person dot store dot ts file. It should be person dot store dot ts. That's it. To here let's create a class, export class, and name of the class will be, I have done some spelling mistake here, person person store. Okay, so our class should be person store. Here we will define injectable. That's it. So we need to define a state here. So just create an interface, and interface will be person state. Let's define here read only. It is not mandatory to use read only here, but it is a good practice so that you can stop the accidental changing to the person state. So this state not going to be modified directly. We cannot change this state directly. That's why I am putting the read only here. So we have closed all the doors for changing this state directly. Person, and do we have person model here? Yes, we have one. Person, that's it. Read only people, and it will be an array. That's it. So it is our state. So now we will just write here, it will inherit the component store. That's good. And in these angular brackets we will pass person state. Okay, so we are doing good so far. Now we're going to do one more thing. We're going to define a constructor here, constructor, and here we're going to call this super. It means we are calling the base constructor. Inside this super we are going to just pass people, and is a blank array. So initially our state will be blank, but we need to load the data for data of peoples. So for that, let's define a method. So just define this method here, load people. Just define private read only, and we are not going to expose this method to the components. Private read only load peoples. Okay, now we are good. Private load people. Just define an array const people equals to const people person, and now we are good. So const people person equals to name, and name will be John, email will be, so here I have added this dummy data array of person. Now let's write here this dot set state, and inside the set state people. So now we have replaced our initial state to this state. We are not updating your state, we are just replacing the previous state with this one. And here let's call this dot load people. That's it. And let's create a selector for it. So read only people, this dot select s dot people. That's it. So let's move here to the person store dot, sorry, person component. Person component. In the person component, let's inject our store. So store equals to inject. That's it. person store. Now here we will define people equals to this dot store dot people. Okay, so now let's define here ng if true and replace this true with people, and by writing async pipe we have subscribed this observable, and let's cast it as people. So people is the alias. We can say that we have created an object of the people here. So now we can access this people, let person of people. Okay, and here we can define person dot name and person dot email. So let's see how it is looking. So right now we are again seeing an error because we haven't inject that service here. So let's inject our person store. That's it. So our service, which is person store, is not defined at the root level because we haven't right here provided in root. It means we have to inject it manually. So here we have injected our service here with provider. It means our person component is tightly coupled on person store. I hope it is fine now. Okay, so you can see that we have defined our data. So let's try to add one data here. So just go here and let's define a method for adding a person. So read only add person equals to this dot updater, and right now we need to pass one more parameter here. So we are expecting a object of type person. So let's type here person. It will be type of person. Now here, that's good, and let's define state comma person. So here we have mutated the state. We are basically adding a new person here. So let's call this method here add person. We are expecting a person here, sorry, not here. So we are just gonna create a dummy data for person equals to this id generate GUID. We have defined this method in the utils.class utils.ts file. We have this method here, so it will return as a GUID. Now name will be, let's type my name, and email equals to, just type @xyz.com. Const person. Okay, let's call the add person method of this store. Okay, so calling the add person method from store, and let's pass person. That's it, and I hope we are doing fine. Here we will define a click event. Inside that we will call this add person method. Let's see how it is going. So if I click here, nothing seems to be working. So let's see. Right now nothing is happening. It means I am doing something wrong here. I have done something wrong, and that is absolutely wrong. So it should be people, because it is an array, and state dot people. So it is the previous state which we are spreading here. In the previous state we can add new object, so that's new object will be person. So it is previous state which we have mutated here, and we are adding a new record here, that is person. So let's see, you can see we have added this thing successfully. So right now these changes won't be persisted because we are not saving them anywhere, and this state is bound to this component only. So if we move here and come back, then we have lost all the data, because this state does not store globally. It is just stored locally for this component only, and we are also not saving these things through our database or using any HTTP service. That's why we are not persisting these changes, and we will see it in the next example, where we will use full CRUD operations with the movie object. So here we have this HTML template. We're gonna work with movies. Now let's close this guy, and now let's work with this folder. Let's create a new store, movie store.ts. That's good. Let's minimize it, and let's create an interface, movie state, and export class movie and movie store. It will extends, it means we are inheriting the component store. Component store component. Okay, we are good now. Inside the Angular brackets we will define movie state. Now let's define constructor, and here we will call the super method, but we haven't defined our state yet, so we will define now. So first thing, we will need a array of movies, so it will be read only movies, movie, and it is not mandatory to pass read only here. I am passing this read only so that we can permanently close the ways to modify this state directly. So now anyone cannot modify this state even accidentally. That's why I'm using read only here. Now we need several states here. So one state will be loading, it will be a type of boolean. One state will be error, it will be type of HTTP error response, and null. That's it. So http error response. I don't know why it is not working. Anyway, error movies, and we need one more state here, action, and it will be a type of, let's define a type action type equals to add or update action type. That's it. It should be work fine. http error response, I don't know, so let's make it any. Now let's define our initial state here. So movies will be a blank array, loading will be by default false, error will be by default null, action will be by default add. That's it. Now we're going to define few states, read only, or just read only, private read only, set loading equals to this dot updater, and here just gonna pass state and loading will be true and error will be null. Actually we do not need to pass error right now, so we have set our loading in this method. Let's copy this guy and paste it here. So now we're gonna set error, it should be loading, set error. So in this set error we will set loading false and error to error, which we will receive from here. Okay, so error will be error. So set loading, set error. That's it. Now we are going to load initial data for movies. So for that we need to call HTTP service from where we will receive the data. So here we have defined our HTTP services inside the movie service file. To work with HTTP we have to define app.config.ts file. So we are using standalone components in this project, so this whole project does not contain any ng modules. That's why we need to define our configuration inside this app.config.ts. Since we are using HTTP services, that's why we have to use that service here. So we are going to use provide HTTP, and here we're going to use import HTTP client module from angular /common /http, provide HTTP, what is it, HTTP client, I guess. Okay, I guess we are fine. I hope it is correct. Provide HTTP client. Okay, so let's uncomment these guys, and here we are getting some errors. Environment.api URLs, let's type. Okay, now we are good. So here we have this get movies, so we are just basically fetching movies, and we are using this delay operator. So we are deliberately delaying our response for 300 seconds, so that we can mimic that we are getting this data from the actual server, not using the JSON server. So that's why we are using delay in every API. So this one is for selecting all the movies, this one for adding movie, this one for updating movie, and this one for deleting movie. So all of those are our services. Now we're going to use those services here. Since we are loading data from our HTTP service, that's why we need a effect. So we're going to define effects here. We're going to define some public methods here in the future. So this dot load people, but before that we need to define a method here. So just here what we're gonna do, private read only add people. Let's type here adding person array to the state. This dot updata, and here just type state. We are expecting an array of person. So here we are just going to define person, that's it, and here just write state and people. Let's see why it is not working. Okay, now we are good. People will be state dot people. Oops, it is movies, movie, not people. Add movies, movie. State dot movies, and just add one movie here. It should be movie, and we are good. And add movies. We are also going to set loading false here. So set loading will be false. Yes, we are good now, and we're just gonna call effect here load movies equals to this dot effects. And since it is it does not take any data from a service, it is just going to be a void type effect. So we can also write here void if you want, and let's type here. So let's go here in this section, and we're gonna see how it is done. Architecture, and in the read, it's not read, effects. So here effect without parameters. So we're gonna work on this thing. So just copy this name trigger. We can also type it here. So trigger, and let's see, trigger it is a arrow function, and it is just returning this trigger, nothing else. So this dot, oops, what am I doing here, read only load movies. Triggers equals to this trigger thing. If I type return here, then it should be fine. Okay, I was typing effects, but it is effect. Now we are good. So basically we are fine now, but we need to do few more things. So we are going to write here pipe, and inside this we are going to write tap, and we are going to set loading here. So just type this dot set loading, and it will trigger the loading state to true. Now you just have to type here exhaust map. Okay, and we are expecting few things here. So inside the exhaust map, oops, what it is, where it is. So I'm just forgetting few things. Okay, so inside this we have to call our service. So inside the exhaust map we are just gonna call our service this dot. Okay, now I get it, what I was doing wrong. Let's close this guy, we do not need it. So here we need to inject our service, here, wherever. So let's see, let's inject it here. Movie service equals to inject, and movie service, this inject. Okay, now here just call this dot movie service dot get movies, and here we're going to use this tap response, and it is not the part of RxJS, it is the operator of this Ngrx component in store, and inside this we will get movies. We're going to type this dot add movies and pass this movies here, and one more thing, error, and this dot set error. So let me see where I'm missing, and I guess I'm doing something wrong here. So actually it should be error function, and we have one more problem here. Press control dot and update import from this, and now this dot set error, let's make it http error response. This dot set error, this dot set error, where is that function? Here let's define it as http error response, and we are good now. So why that http error response was not working here that time? Oh, it is fine. Okay, so we have just basically changed this http error response from any type, and we also have defined our type here, error, and it is a type of http error response, and here we have just call this method set error. So lots of thing is happening here, but basic thing is we are using effect here, which is a void type, and it is just observable of void type. It means we are not receiving anything here, and we are using pipe operator. Then here we are using we are just creating a side effect. It means whenever this effect will be triggered, then this side effect will also be triggered, and we will set loading to true here. And this exhaust map, now we are just switching to this observable, which is a http service call, and we are piping to this observable. Then we are using this tab response operator of the Ngrx component store, and here we have two methods. One is next and another one is error, something like that. So I'm just going to remove this guy here. So we are just receiving this response from API. We can also say it is the response, it is the API response. So we are receiving this thing from this HTTP call, which is just observable. So we are passing this value to add movies method, which we have defined here. So we have passed that movie array here, and here we are altering the state, and in case of error we will call this set method. Now we need a selector, so we need selector. So we will define those selectors here. Just type here private methods, and here selectors. So first selector will be read only movies. This dot select s dot movies. Next selector we will need is loading. It will be loading, then error and action. So I'm just going to copy this loading, then error, then action. The problem is now we have, sorry, it is action. Now we have multiple states or multiple selectors for the state. It means we have 1 2 3 4 selectors. So we have to call all those 4 selector in the component, and we have to subscribe these selectors because these are observable. So we need to subscribe them 4 times, even with a subscribe method or with async time. So we have to subscribe them 4 times. We do not want that. So what we will do, we will create a view model, and let's name it read only VM. So let's make all of them private. So it will be a one view model, this dot select. Inside here we will create object. So one object will be movies, it will be this dot movies. Another one will be loading, this dot loading, error, and this dot error. Last thing, action, this dot action. So instead of passing 4 selectors, we will just pass one view model, and inside that view model we will have an object of these properties. So now let's go to the movie component, and here we will inject our store. So here this store equals to this dot store inject and movie store. That's it. Now create a constructor and call this dot store dot load movies method. So it will load all the movies, and here we can use this VM, and we are gonna select the view model from our store. So we have selected our store. That's fine. Now here we're gonna write everything inside this ng container. So we have defined everything inside this ng container. So in the root label we will just check VM. If VM, then we are gonna subscribe it with async pipe, and let's use as VM. So it is just like we are creating an object of this view model observable. We can check here if VM dot loading, then it will display this loading message, and if VM dot error, then we can load error message here, and if VM dot movies, so we can load movies here. So it is just an array. So we're gonna delete this array, and we're gonna type here VM dot movies, and here we will define movie dot title and movie dot year. So see why it is not working. Movie, oops, I have put a colon here, but it should be dot. Okay, so movie dot title, and that's it. Now I think it should be fine. So yeah, again I've done a mistake, so I'm gonna use, let's see, we have defined injectable here or not. So yeah, we haven't defined any injectable here. So here injectable. So now we have defined our decorator here, which is injectable decorator, and we are going to inject this service at the component level. So here just inject movie store, and I hope we are good now. So yes, no error. Okay, so I've done some mistakes here. First of all, it is not people, so it should be a movie. So I'm just gonna remove this guy, and it should be name movies. It makes more sense. And here we will just pass this movies, and now we should be fine. So here we have loaded our movies. That's it. Now what we are going to do, let's work on this add functionality. So for that we need to create a method here. Let's name it add movie, not add movies. So I'm just gonna copy this guy and paste it here and remove not here, just paste it here. Add a movie. Let's just name it add movie to state. Okay, instead of array we will pass the object, and movies should be like this: state dot movies comma movie. So it is our add to state method, and here I'm just gonna copy this whole method. Rather than load movies, it will be create movie, and it would not be a void type. Let's say we are just receiving a movie, and it would be movie, which will be a type of observable of movie. So it will expect a movie observable as a parameter. Now here we will write movie dot pipe. It will be the same, and rather than exhaust map we will use switch map here, because we will quickly switch from this observable to this observable. So here we're going to use this switch map. Now just call this method add movie, and the switch map will take one observable, and this observable we are going to receive from this movie. So it will be a movie which we are receiving from here. So it is one observable. Inside that we are calling another observable. So this data is coming from this observable, so it is a movie which we are going to pass here, and in the response we will get a single movie object. Then we will call add movie to state API response, which is a type of movie. We can also define it here like this. That's it, and other thing will be the same. So let's call it here. So let's create a method here, add movie. Okay, so it should not be like this. Let's name it on submit, because we are going to submit a form. So let's uncomment this guy, and we are creating a form. So here we are going to inject one more service, which is a form builder. So fb equals to inject form builder, that's it, and form group. And this form group is not going to be work, because we have to import a reactive forms module. So I'm just gonna call reactive forms module. Okay, so this form group validator, we have three fields: id, title, and year, and this method is going to be called on submit. So here we have this form, just name it form group, and its value will be movie form ng submit equals to on submit. That's it. Okay, So rather than add movies, we can also write it like vm.action, and default action is add, so we're gonna see the add movie here. And in the button we will also write vm.action. so default value of action is add. Okay, let's see how it is looking. Oh, it is fine. So here we have this hidden field which is form control name id. So when we update our form, this value will be present here, otherwise this value is going to be null. Now we have another field title, one more field year, and that's it. Let's define some validation logic to the submit button. So where is our submit button type? Because yeah, this one. So here we are just going to write disabled equals to movie form dot invalid. So if this form is invalid, then this button is going to be disabled. That's good. Now let's fill some value, and it is done. Okay, now let's come back to the logic. Here just type const movie equals to object dot assign, and this dot movie form dot value. So we are converting our form value to the movie type object. It will be a movie. Okay, now we will check if movie dot id, it means our movie id is null, and on the case of adding value, our movie id will be null. In the case of updating value, our movie id won't be null. So here we will add data, and otherwise we will update the data. Update data, and at the end we are going to reset the form. That's it. So if our movie id is null, it means we are going to call the add method, create movie, and pass a movie object. That's it. So let's see how it is working. So you can see we have added this value. So if I refresh this page, this value is retained. Now let's work on this edit guy. So for that we need to create another method, but before that let's work on this edit functionality. So let's call edit function, and here we will just pass the movie, and here we will just call the cancel method. So let's define these two methods, edit movie, and here we will just define the cancel method, this dot movie form dot reset, and this dot set action to update. To do. Okay, so we need a function where we can set this action data, but we are getting some error here. It should be a small c. Okay, now let's copy anything here. Let's copy this set loading and paste it to the public method. This method going to be public because we are going to call this method from our component. So it will be set action, this dot update dot state loading true, and we do not need to set it true, but rather than this we are just gonna call this dot sorry what it was, action equals to update, but we're going to define it here. So just action type, and rather than update, action type dot action type. Now we are fine. So here we are setting the action manually. Now we need to call this guy here. So this dot store dot set action, and let's just type update. Okay, let's remove this guy, and sorry, it should be add. So when I click on this edit button, this pencil icon, then this method is going to be called, and we are going to set action to the update. Okay, and this dot movie form dot patch value to movie. So now we have updated our form value and replaced that value with this movie object. Okay, now if I click on this button, so we can see we have the name of movies, and here we have this update button, and we have this cancel button. If I click on this cancel button, our form should be reset, but it is not working. So let me see why it is not working. Cancel button. Okay, we haven't called this method cancel. And I have called this method here, which should not be the case. Here we will have a remove method, which we will define later. So here we have defined our cancel method. So if I click here and click on this, then everything working fine. Okay, so now we need to create a functionality for updating state. So I'm just gonna call this, copy this method and update movie state, and this one just fine. So we are going to change this method. So I'm just gonna write here state dot movies dot map, and if movie dot id equals to movie that we are receiving in this method, if those IDs matches, then we will return this m, otherwise then we will return movie, otherwise we will return m. So it is our update movie state method. Okay, then we also need a effect here. So I'm just gonna copy this guy, paste it here. It will be update movie. Everything will be fine. Sorry, not fine. Everything will be the same, but we will change few things. So here we will receive a movie observable. Then here we'll call set loading. Just we will change it to update movie, and in the update movie it will take two arguments, so what it will take, id and movie. So just type movie dot id and movie, tap response, api response, and here we will just change it to update movie state, and that's done. So here just go here and let's work on this else state. In the else state we will, so this else state it here in the submit method. So here we will just call store dot update movie, just pass movie, and that should be fine. And one more thing that I haven't done, and that is a terrible mistake. You can see here, not here, let's find db.json file, and here we can see that we have this id which is created by default. So here we are just gonna create that id, movie dot id equals to generate GUID. That's it. Okay, so let's try to update this to ggg and 122, and yeah, it is working fine. Let's refresh this and it is working fine. Let's try to add one method, so sorry, one data, one record, whatever it is, movie xyz and year 2001, and we have added this. So movie 6 and update and year 1992, let's update it and everything is fine. Let's refresh it and changes are persisted. Okay, so let's find db.json, and here we will see that now we have our GUID here. That's good. Now let's work on this delete functionality. It is the one last thing which is remained. So here just gonna copy this guy and delete movie from state, this dot updater, and here rather than our movie object we will get id string type, and here we are just gonna change this to if id does not equals to id, and it would be filter. Oof, that annoying bird. Okay, so it is our delete functionality for the state, and we're gonna write effect for this one also. So just copy this guy and this guy, delete movie. Here it will be id, it will be a type of a string, it is also going to be a string. That's good, it should be id. Okay, it will be the same and it will be the id. Okay, here we will have delete movie, and here we will just pass id. Okay, and in the response we are not going to get anything, and here we will just pass remove delete movie from state. Here we will just pass the id. Okay, so let's define this function here in the movie component, delete movie id string, this dot movie, sorry, this dot store dot delete movie, and we're gonna pass id here, this delete more. We are going to call it here, so delete movie, pass movie dot id to it. Let's see. Okay, our movie is deleted. That's good. It's good. So let's add one movie, mo here, 1 to 1. That's it. Let's refresh it. It's fine. mov 222 and update. Okay, let's refresh this and let's delete this. Okay, let's do it again just for the testing purpose. Update movie 11 and here 2221, update and delete this guy, and we are done. So we have performed all the CRUD operations with Ngrx component store, and we are also use the effects so that we can perform the HTTP request also. So I hope that was enough demonstration. So we have few simple states like this counter, then we have a little bit complex state like this one, and then we have used this state with the effects, and we have performed all the CRUD operations. And that's it for now. See you next time.